with this whole move towards divestment from Russia. Now mind you, the amount that we had invested in there was less than 1% of the value. I think initially it was about 500 million, and I'm only talking about the state, not the city. About $500 million in investments. By the time that the divestment posture was announced, I think it was worth less than 200, so we had already lost money. But then, on top of that, they said we're going to divest. They didn't realize that the markets are two-way street. The other side could decide to put restrictions on you. So what did Vladimir Putin say? He says, well, we're not going to let any foreigners sell their shares in our markets. So since you have all these shares in Gazprom or whatever you have, well, okay, great, but you can't sell them. Which means that on paper, they're effectively worth nothing. Until there is a market to value those investments and to be able to divest them, they're basically worthless now. So you went up with great fanfare and great virtue signaling about what you wanted to do, which you may agree or disagree with, but the point being, from the point of view of an investment manager who's trying to act prudently to make sure that you're maximizing returns and minimizing risk for your pension holders, it was precisely the wrong thing to do, and now you have a sliver of investments that's not worth anything for now. What happens if China invades Taiwan or something else happens? Oh, yeah. Mind you, I can tell you, forget just the direct investments in whatever Chinese equities we may or may not have, or bonds, or what have you. And mind you, from an analyst position, when I worked for a long time in emerging markets, which were very volatile, and we dealt with this sort of stuff all the time, because there was always things happening, whether it's macroeconomic things, whether it was political stuff, that then we would have to reassess what to do with our portfolios. We didn't just look, okay, well, do I own shares in Chinese companies? No, then you also have to know what other companies you invested in and how their supply chains were exposed, or how much revenues did they generate in particular day. So for example, just take Argentina or what have you, or Brazil. When Brazil devalued their real, or Mexico when they had their peso devaluation early in my career, you say, okay, well how many, obviously, what's your direct exposure, whatever Mexican equities you own. But then also, okay, how many other stocks in the US, in Europe, elsewhere in Latin America have, how much of those companies generate the revenues from Mexico, or how much of their supply comes from Mexico. With China, if you can imagine, since we get most everything from China, if we wanted to really try to drill down on what our exposure to China would be, it would be ridiculous. And if we managed that the way we manage the Russia, we'd be in bad shape. I was always saying that, I posited to people, the very same people who are particularly virtue signaling about let's divest from everything Russian regardless of what it is, were they also the same people, by and large, who were telling us that the Russians were responsible for stealing the election from Hillary Clinton, and that they were in collusion with Donald Trump. And some people likened that to an attack on us the way comparable to 9/11, comparable to Pearl Harbor. They were saying this is a terrible thing, one of the worst things, well, until January 6th, now that just took the cake. They were saying that was the worst thing. Well, if you really felt that way, whether it's true or not, you don't have to agree with it. If you really felt that way, from a prudent investment manager's point of view, what should you have done? Maybe you should have done a quiet exit, or started a quiet exit from those investments 5-6 years ago. You don't wait till now, which tells me one of two things. You never believed all those stories, and you were just peddling politics, unfortunately, is what happens, which is another reason you should not politicize your investment management, particularly when you're supposed to be representing all New Yorkers. But you didn't really believe it, or if you did, well then you're really bad at your job and you shouldn't continue. Because let me tell you, things are going to get worse. So I know I've gone on for a while. I always appreciate that you allow me to kind of expand on, but we need your support. Thank you. I'm asking for your support, I'm asking for your vote, and I'm asking you to tell as many people not only about the issues with Comptroller, but statewide, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, but you have to remind them. Don't let them forget, between now and November, even as Democrats try as far as they do to reverse in half measures all of the damage they've done, because they see the polls don't support them. That's why they got rid of mandates, some of the mandates for the mask, and now they're getting rid of all of them. Remind them, they're the ones, and they're still talking about possibility of bringing some of that stuff back.
Oh, we can't.
And the vaccines and things like
Oh,
that.
that's good.
So, thank you for your time. If you have any questions, please.
Yeah, I had a quick question. Especially, speaking of the lockdowns, they made everyone stay home and said, well, you could get unemployment. And now,
If you could file for it.
right, if you did file for it and you figured that out and you get the paperwork that they wanted, uploaded it and deal with, because you're dealing with a computer, there was no one really available on the phone or anything really to guide people. And once you did that, and they gave you the little shekels that they did, and now people are getting letters and emails saying you must give additional information or we're gonna take your money from you. Yeah, to July 2nd. I got this was a spam email. Oh, now finally you get a letter. It's a month later, you got the letter, a month later. But you're like, what did they want? We want your 1099 from whatever year. We want it, but didn't we do this already? That's why we qualified? Now we want more additional documents or else we'll steal all your money from you. We give you 10,000, we want it now. Obviously you spent it to live, especially with inflation. And now you need a wheelbarrow to go to a store to buy milk, but that's okay. We want whatever the heck you had left. You spent, you have no money, that's great. We want to make sure you're homeless. We want to increase our homeless population in New York City.
But something
We want to make New York into Detroit. Who wouldn't want to do that? So supposedly they say it's from the federal government. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But they are sending letters to a lot of people, and the people are getting it and frightening people. Like, what the heck is this about? And now you have to be like a master of documents. You have to, what do you mean I have to, what else do they want from me? So they're threatening people to get their money back. Do you know anything about what the heck that's all about? Like,
No, look, I've seen a little bit of a bait and switch when Biden came into office, and then he provided this tax credit, child tax credit, in which people were getting like $300 to $500 a month for their children. I said, oh, my wife was all, oh, this is great, wonderful. Then we filed our taxes, and it turns out that that wasn't really an additional benefit. That was simply an advance on the tax credit you already take at the, at the time you file your taxes. So all of a sudden, you file them. I mean, even things like TurboTax and electronics didn't seem to catch this.
Wow.
And all of a sudden they come back and said, oh, you thought you were getting a refund? Actually, you owe us about $100.
Wow.
What are you talking about? And it was because the tax credit that I would normally get for my children, turns out that additional check seemed like an additional thing they're doing to help us. It was simply an advance. Yeah.
You're talking about the IRS and the federal tax return. He's
Yeah.
talking about what I want to talk about, the New York State Department of Taxation and Finance. I am due a 2018 refund, which is being held up because New York State is asking for additional documents. Every year I file properly. This year was March 29th. I filed properly, but I was told that they hired additional accountants and auditors, and they're asking for documents, New York State, not Joe Biden.
No, I know he was talking about the state. But
Well, that's what I'd like you to address. New York State, why is New York State doing this?
Yeah, because they want to make you jump through hoops. Keep in mind, even before the pandemic, whenever you wanted to contact the New York State Department of Taxation and Finance, whenever we were bringing up unemployment, whenever you reached out to any of these agencies, not only did you have to wait often hours or have to leave a number to have them call you back, that was in the best of times. Once the pandemic came around, you couldn't get anybody online. You couldn't get these things done. So these things, when you do have refunds, I mean, it's wonderful how they work. When you owe them money, they're on you constantly. Letter. And then if you want to talk to them, you can't talk to any of them. But when you owe them money, they're on you constantly. When they owe you money, they'll do whatever possible to slow things out. But that's one aspect. The other aspect is, to be fair, if you want to be fair, is that the whole issue also of personnel. I mean, they had, I don't know if it was limited personnel, just really bad service. I think it was a combination of both before. But then once pandemic came around, there's a lot of those people who just didn't come back to work either. They want to work remotely, they moved out of state, or they don't want to do this job anymore. So this whole thing where they're asking for more, that's just a way to make it so that they can keep that cash in their coffers longer to make you justify more what's been done. Or it could also be because they've had done such a shoddy job at maintaining their record keeping throughout the pandemic that now they're having to backtrack everything.
Yeah, I think what happened with that is they basically gave everyone anything they wanted and said, we'll sort it out later on. We want to make sure everyone stays home. So, yeah, all right, you qualify, you get a car, like Oprah, right? You get a car.
Excuse me.
Well, you get a cough. And so you do that, right? And boom, 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 boom. Use the restroom. Go ahead, Donna. So anyway, so you get this, right? So, you know, at the end of the day, they wanted additional documents so they could keep the pandemic money.
Traditionally, the IRS, if I had a refund due from the IRS, it took 2 weeks. And traditionally, if I had a refund coming from the New York State Department of Taxation and Finance, it took 5 weeks. After 10 weeks of waiting, I got a letter saying we are now requiring additional documents. But it wasn't for 19 or 20, it's only for last year. It's only for 2021 they're doing this. This is like a paradigm shift. This is the first time they're doing this.
Yeah, because I think it is, like I said, it's a combination of a lack of staffing, poor record keeping, and because, you know, I don't think I'm being conspiratorial in saying that, they do everything possible. It's like an insurance company. There's some insurance companies who will tell you no right off the bat when you file a claim because they want to kind of either make you work for it or they expect that some people will be discouraged and won't get it. I mean, that's unfortunately the way a lot of government and a lot of these things work. Again, you are public enemy number one if you owe them a penny.
Yes.
But if they owe you any money, and this happened to me with New York a few years ago. In fact, I had filed some taxes and said, you know what, you guys owe me like a $1,000 refund. And I've been waiting, it's been like 16 weeks, and I keep getting in touch with you, and then you asked me, I couldn't do it electronically, I had to file it physically with paper, but it's been 4 months or however. What's going on? I finally was able to get someone online and says, well, we just need to verify. Someone said, well, couldn't you let me know, or what's the deal? Because, and I told him straight out, I said, you know, if I owed you money, I'd be getting 10 calls from you. But since you owe me money, you're very nice to let it kind of slip by. And she actually apologized to me, which I found shocking. It was very nice. And after we did, then eventually, shortly afterwards, I did get the state refund and a little bit of interest. I mean, interest being is nothing. But yeah, but I wish I could give you a good answer to know why that's happening. But I figure it's going to be one of those issues.
For years, they wanted the transition from paper filing to electronic filing.
Mm-hmm.
And they got it. Every year I file electronically. I go to H&R Block, I know the preparer very well, and I file electronically, and I submit all my documents, and she goes over them fastidiously. And I do everything right. It's good enough for the IRS, but it's not good enough for the New York State Department of Taxation and Finance.
Well, let me put it into context. When we went into pandemic, about the unemployment, it took people, there were some people that months after losing their job could still not get unemployment. Not because it took so long to process their claims, because they couldn't even make their claims. Obviously, speaking to someone, they couldn't do it. Going online, they couldn't say, you know, the system was so overwrought or what have you, that 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, and they still couldn't put in their claims. So the fact that something like this would be happening in other areas of the state, because even in good times, even in the normal pre-pandemic times, it was impossible to deal with. And again, it's not, unfortunately, for those in power, one of the main priorities of state government is let's make things perhaps better for the taxpayers, make it, for the users, us, who are supposed to be the one that they're serving. So they can always also use the same, well, it's COVID, we're understaffed, we're all this, to explain that. But I think that only serves to expose even further the inefficiencies and the incompetence that was already there.
If you get elected, could you change that?
I can look into it. I'm not sure it's under the purview of the controller. But that's the thing.
It might be.
I would definitely audit the control, I would definitely audit the New York State Department of Taxation. I find it, well, it is somewhat of an issue, but can I change that? I definitely work towards changing it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's all I'm asking.
Absolutely, because again, it's sometimes people think it's the big things, sometimes it's the little things. If Tom Napoli wants to focus on little things that can really make lives better, it's not the lady who's padding her hours by a few $100s a month so she could qualify for vacation during pandemic. Maybe make something where, let's say, people are getting their, in the same way that we have that lost funds or that sort of unclaimed funds thing, which he makes a big issue about. He'll show up to some local organization and he'll bring a check this big for $357. Look what we brought to the U.S. American Chamber of this and that or whatever.
Buy milk now.
He should be doing that for people's money, because this is your money. I mean, I'm very much, just speaking real quickly philosophically, and I'll go to you. I'm very much of the belief that we as citizens, we as individuals, should be the primary owners of what we produce.
Amen.
It's not the government. So when they take money away from us, they're the ones who have to justify to us why they should keep, and more importantly, why they should keep an ever-increasing amount of it. When a politician asks you, well, you want a tax cut, but how are we going to pay for it? It's precisely the wrong question. Don't ask me how you're going to pay for it. Ask me, better yet tell me, why you feel entitled to keep more of it. Because again, when things are good in government, spending goes up. Or I should say, when things are good in the economy, spending goes up. When things are bad in the economy, taxes go up.
Yeah.
They never time the belt. Companies, when things are bad, they have to figure out ways of cutting costs. Maybe they have to reduce margins. They know they can't just simply increase prices because people will stop purchasing, lay off people. But government to them is, they have a different mentality. And because so many of these people are people who have not done anything aside from government, or the last time they had to actually deliver results in the private sector may have been decades and decades ago, they live in a bubble. They're out of touch. I think, ideology aside, Democrats, I just feel they're out of touch right now.
Now, New York City.
Oh, I'm sorry, I think I see a couple.
Yeah.
I want to,
Yes.
what you're saying was amazing, and I didn't really understand, but from what I can gather is that Americans are no longer working for America or themselves. All this money, like $40 billion going to Ukraine or other countries, and you're talking about taxes and this person can't get his money, because all this money, we're no longer, it's a globalist economy, and we're working for the globalists and not for America or for New York or for helping. And Mayor, whatever his name, Blasio, he took like $80 million or something like that. He can't. No one's asking him what he did with all that money.
$1 billion.
He gave $1 billion. He's living. Everybody's corrupt. I mean, the whole system. It's like, how it's impossible. You're going. This person said, I can't. I have to make these papers. But you're just saying, well, I have the same thing. But it seems like nobody's working for America or for the people anymore.
It's a good thing you bring that up because, Tom Napoli about a decade, less than 10 to 15 years ago, put the supposed anti-corruption office. And in the last report, maybe a little higher now, but in the last report he said that over the last 12 years that it's been in effect, he had recovered about $82 million for the taxpayers. So think about that. That's maybe about $7 million a year. Again, this is put into the context of a multi-hundred billion dollar budget. He's really saying, we've had 250 arrests, $83 million over the last 11, 12 years. Minuscule amount. And that's one of the issues of saying, okay, perhaps you need to think a little bit bigger and really look at what are the problems. You brought up Ukraine again. I don't want to talk about Ukraine because it's irrelevant to the discussion, and people will think on either side of the some people support it, some people do not. Irrelevant, but the whole issue of Congress asked for $30 billion, but Congress has such great largesse. They said no, we'll give you $40 billion. And mind you, people keep talking about the $40 billion. They forget that they had already been given like a month or two before,
But that's-
another 15 billion, 20 billion. So we're talking about $60 billion that we're happy to send over